The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency will be in Milwaukee later Tuesday, virtually. It's holding roundtables around the country to foster dialogue with communities affected by lead in drinking. Part of the impetus is to get input on the federal lead and copper rule. Some observers hope more stringent regulations, combined with federal funding, will lead to the replacement of lead service lines that provide water to thousands of homes. WUWM environmental reporter Susan Bentz has the story.
The federal lead and copper rule was enacted 30 years ago and hasn't been updated since. It says if a municipality discovers more than 15 parts per billion of lead in drinking water being delivered to residents, the water utility must go through additional corrosion control steps. Because no amount of lead is considered safe, especially for young children, community advocates are calling for a more stringent rule. During a recent visit to Milwaukee, EPA Administrator Michael Reagan spoke of the problem.
So we're really focusing on our priorities to get our rulemakings up to speed so that we can protect public health in all of these media.
Brenda Coley is one of the people closely watching the process. She's co-executive director of Milwaukee Water Commons. Its mission is to empower residents to become advocates for fresh water and their right to it. Coley wants to see changes in the federal lead and copper rule and plans to speak at the community roundtable. More than 70,000 Milwaukee residences have lead service pipes, and Coley says many families have resorted to purchasing bottled water because they fear water coming out of the tap is unsafe.
That is a huge issue, and people who are most vulnerable are spending lots of money on bottled water. You know, that bottled water is not necessarily regulated. And so the EPA putting in these standards, testing these kinds of things can help us restore faith back in our water and therefore in our public institutions, because people don't trust them.
As for the next iteration of the lead and copper rule, Coley hopes it sets an accelerated timetable to replace lead service pipes in communities around the country.
We don't need this to draw out. We need this done in a generation. We can't have an 11-year-old waiting till she's 60 to get the lead laterals changed.
Coley's voice is just one among a growing chorus of Milwaukeeans calling for the lines to be replaced. Meanwhile, Mayor Tom Barrett has long maintained that lead paint presents a far greater threat to children than lead in drinking water. During the recent visit by EPA Administrator Reagan, Barrett said federal relief dollars could help with lead paint remediation. He called it a generational opportunity to also replace lead water lines with potential funding from a huge federal infrastructure bill.
Our hopes are really pinned on the infrastructure bill to address the lead pipe issue, which is really, at its core, it's really an aging infrastructure bill.
Barrett needs Common Council approval to spend relief dollars on lead paint remediation, and the future of the infrastructure bill is uncertain. On Tuesday, a deal that senators struck with President Biden was in jeopardy as Republicans mounted resistance over ways to pay for it. Susan Bentz, 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.